On this episode of Common Mystics, we are honored to talk to an exceptional guest. I'm Jennifer James.
I'm Jill Stanley.
We're psychics.
We're sisters.
We are common mystics. We find extraordinary stories in ordinary places. But today we are so excited to be talking with the incomparable Samantha Fey.
Yay!
Yay!
She is a published author. She was published, her writings in BeliefNet, Women's World magazine. She's written 2 books, the second of which we are going to talk about today with her. The Awake Dreamer, A Guide to Lucid Dreaming, Astral Travel, and Mastering the Dreamscape is available right now wherever you're getting your favorite books. But she is releasing this autumn Heavenly Alliance, Call on Your Spirit Guides, Ancestors, and Angels to Manifest the Life You Want. So, please, let me introduce you all to, if you've been under rocks for the past 10, 12 years, to Samantha Fey. Yay!
Thank you. Thank you so much.
God.
Happy to be here and talk to you guys.
Oh my gosh, we are so honored. You have 2 wildly popular podcasts, one of which, The Psychic Teachers, and the other is with our Mima, the Enlightened Empath, with Denise, your co-host, who we love. And if not for your friendship with her, I can literally say that this would not be happening right now. We would not be putting our energies into creating something for the spiritual-minded people of the world. So thank you so much.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So I have to tell you something. So Jen and I are sisters, and we fight a lot. We are at different ends of the spectrum, like in every category. So
I'm organized. Jill, not so much, for example.
And we have different ideas about things, but listening to you and Deb on Psychic Teachers disagree and have full conversations about things that you're not exactly sure if you both see eye to eye on is a model that Jennifer and I use to communicate with each other. Not kidding.
That is very
fantastic. True. Yeah, we disagree on a lot of things, but I hope we model that it's okay to have friends and disagree with what their opinions or beliefs are or how they view the world, and you can still love each other. So I'm really glad you guys pick up on that.
Yeah, truly. And so now if we disagree...
There's no fighting, there's no swearing, no
crying.
tears. Right. Which is what that's what we're used to. That was what our model was. So, no, really, just so to hear you two from different points of view, different backgrounds, be able to disagree. And then, like you said earlier, sit with something that maybe doesn't resonate and just let it be. Even if you don't agree with it, has been really powerful.
Oh, I'm so glad. I think what it comes down to is at the end of the day, Deb and I know that we know nothing.
Yeah.
So how can we know that she's wrong or I'm right or vice versa? And I love talking to people with different beliefs and ideas and opinions. How else are we going to grow and expand if we don't do that?
It's true. And nowadays with algorithms, it seems like people are offended by an opposite opinion. Like we're so insulated in our own beliefs that it's if something pops out at you that doesn't fit, then you're automatically angry. And it's like, no, why can't we just learn and take it in and sit with it for a minute?
Yeah. And that does worry me with the algorithm because I feel like people's news feeds are skewed towards their beliefs. And then again, how are they going to see other people's opinions? That's the definition of empathy, right? Is to be able to open your heart and imagine walking in someone else's shoes. So I think that's really important to do. And I'm just glad you say that we model that and that you guys do as well.
Truly. So I know Jennifer disagrees when she's like, let me sit with that. I'm like, okay.
I actually say that. Yeah.
So I have had a life path reading with you. You sent the emails in the past. I was a participant in the Psychic Teachers Tea Time. So that
was a long time ago.
I loved it. I had like 20 questions, and every time someone took a breath, I was just like yelling out questions. I was like, why do you have an alternator card? And what is it? Like really quickly. So I loved it. To have time to pick both of your brains was amazing. And Jen and I both participated in classes with you and Denise. So
she's such a delight, and she's so fun to teach with as well.
I love her voice. I love her energy. She feels like literal family, and we do not say that lightly. Like if I email her, it feels like she gets my energy from the email and she
And she
knows how to
does.
respond. Yeah.
Yeah, she's amazing. I can't say enough about her. She's absolutely fantastic, and she is kind of like a mother to everyone, even though she's too young for me to say that. But she has that loving presence, doesn't she?
She really
Sure
does.
does.
And to your benefit, you found her at John Holland's retreat and just became friends with her and created Enlightened Empaths because you saw in her what we all feel from her energy.
Yeah, yeah, I'll never forget that. And it's such a good example of how intuition serves us in everyday life. Because I just showed up all by myself. And I was actually looking forward to being all by myself. At the time I had three little kids and a zoo of pets, and I just didn't get any time to myself. So I brought my books and my journal, and I just thought I'd sit in the back and listen and learn. And she was, I don't know, in the fourth row back from the front, and I was just instantly drawn to her, and I sat right next to her, and that was years ago, 12 years ago, I think, and we've been friends ever since.
So, how long have you been doing the Teachers podcast with Deb Bowen?
We celebrated 14 years in March.
Wow.
God, it was coming up on 15. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
I know. It's crazy to think about. And when we started it, we just had no plan, no idea. We didn't think anyone would listen to us, but we just really wanted to do a show that wasn't so much like us talking at you and teaching to you, but really just we were so curious about all of this stuff. And we believed that we came to it from a grounded intellectual research point of view because we were both teachers. And we thought, well, let's just see if anyone wants to join us. And, luckily they did. And we've grown, and I just love it. We have people from all over the world, as I'm sure, and I know you guys do too. And it's a wonderful thing to see happen, isn't it?
It is.
It is. It makes you feel like it's a small world. To your point about the Psychics Teachers podcast and Enlightened Empaths, is that for Jen and I, you really inspired us to be curious about these things we thought we were experiencing and to expand them and to want to use those gifts to be of service, truly. And we didn't know that when we started listening. We started in 2016, right after our mother died. I don't know how we found you. You popped up on my podcast feed. I'm sure you heard that all the time. And it was just instant binge. And from then on, we didn't realize, we knew that we wanted to be in service to our communities in our mother's name. And we tried to volunteer at a nursing home. I tried taking care of animals at the animal shelter, but no one was really, it wasn't a consistency. And then it just popped into our heads really organically, oh, this could be a podcast, what we've done with our family for years. And so it was being able to come out of the psychic closet is something that you and Deb talked about a lot. So having these women that already not only broke the glass ceiling as professionals, articulate women already of success, to say, but I'm also psychic. And to lead us through that shattered glass to become better people ourselves is something that you really did model for us. And really, we're just imitating you at this point with a little flair and more swearing.
And more flair. Oh, wow. I really appreciate that. I feel like I'm still coming out of the psychic closet in many ways. It's such a struggle. And I really I always hope that I've been able to get that across on the show, that this isn't easy, waving your weird freak flag, as I say, and claiming to the world, yeah, I'm different. It's never been easy for me. And to hear you two say that is really interesting, because when I listen to your show, I think how wonderful to have a sister that's also into all of this stuff and supporting one another. I think that would be really amazing. And it sounds like you guys grew up in a family that was really open to this. And I didn't in many ways. You're very traditional type of family and church on Sunday. And so it was very isolating for me. And I'm not an isolated person. I like to share and talk, obviously. And so that was hard to find those people. And I had to go out and seek them. And Deb was one of the first ones I found. And that's really something that we are constantly emphasizing is go find your people. If you feel alone in your spiritual awakening, or if you feel misunderstood, or if you feel strange wanting to smudge your house every week and look at the full moon, and if like me, you plan vacations around Mercury retrograde cycles, you're not alone.
Yeah. That's amazing. And you're so brave about it to talk. And this is leading me into other questions down the outline. So I'm going to stop myself, give Jen less editing. But as we said, your relationship with Deb and that with Denise has really inspired the work that we're doing now. And we're so grateful for you. So sincerely, from the bottom of our hearts, and I mean, thank you so much for being courageous to be vulnerable, because just being in that space to receive messages, it feels like you have a skid knee, but it's like your whole torso is open to energy coming at you. So that's hard anyway. And then I feel like when you project that into the world space, people are feeling your energy, and it may be draining too, psychically and just as a person. So
Oh yeah,
thank you.
100%. Oh, thank you. I received that with so much gratitude.
Oh,
So let's get into your new book.
okay.
Okay.
We're very excited. Okay. So your new
Okay.
book, Heavenly Alliance, Calling on Your Spirits. Jennifer, take the question.
Yeah, Heavenly Alliance, calling on your spirit guides, ancestors, and angels to manifest the life you want. I was so grateful to have an advanced copy of the book, so I was able to read it. And it has been described as a roadmap to deepen one's spiritual connection and embrace the support of your ancestors, guides, and angels. But really, it's written like a course on navigating one's earthly existence, right? So, what inspired you to write the book? And is there a reason as to the timing of it?
I've wanted to write this book for a really long time, and it felt kind of arrogant to say I'm writing kind of like a course syllabus for being here on Earth. So I think that was the time. It took me a long while to kind of wrap my head around that. I feel as though I'm always defending myself, right? I'm always defending my beliefs and my faith, and people will always come at me and say, well, if a God, goddess, creator, whatever you want to call it, is so great, why does this, and that happen? And I think about those questions all the time, and I grapple with them myself. And what I really came down to was that, this is a school, and I don't think this is a easy school. I think if there are other planets in the galaxies, we are like the Harvard or the Oxford of schools, right?
I would like to think so.
Yeah. And I think that we really are here to grow and evolve our souls. And we do that best, unfortunately, through struggles and challenges. So I wanted to write the book to remind people that if you're going through a difficult time or a beautiful time, I do think it's all part of the divine plan to help us really polish ourselves up so that our light can shine even brighter. And I also wanted to remind people that even though we have these invisible helpers that do appear invisible, they aren't. They are there. They are around us. You can call on your guides and your angels and your loved ones in heaven. And I really wanted to remind people of that and to give some examples and some exercises, but also just some knowledge of why all this crap can happen in your life and how to reframe it in a way that is inspiring and uplifting and encouraging rather than woe is me.
Speaking of the exercises, we loved the 3 envelopes exercise. Can you describe what that is and how often should we be using it? Because I feel like I can really abuse this exercise.
Yes, I love that exercise too. It was taught to me by actually a couple of other intuitive teachers. So I don't know who to ascribe it to. I did not create it. I think it's just one of those exercises that's been around forever, but it's a fantastic way to learn how to read for yourself. Because I'm sure you guys can agree, intuitively tuning in for ourselves is really, really difficult because we're so emotionally attached. But with the 3 envelopes exercises, you're writing 3 questions down. You're putting them in 3 separate envelopes, and everything has to be identical. So I usually recommend 3 identical index cards and 3 identical business envelopes. So you don't know what question is in which envelope, and you shuffle them up and you pull one envelope and you just hold it. using psychometry, using your intuition, getting into that meditative space, and you just want to meditate. And I walk people through on how to clairaudiently hear any messages or songs that might be intuitively downloaded to you, how to clairsentiently feel any intuitive information that's coming to you, and then how to clairvoyantly see any information. And then again, I direct them to use their claircognizance and just write down any instant knowings they might be getting. And you just write all of that down on the back of the envelope. You do not open it. You move on to the next envelope and do the same thing in the third. And then when you're done, you open up the envelope, read the question, look at what you wrote on the back, and see how it aligns. And I've done this exercise with classes for years, and I don't think I've ever had anyone say mine was completely 100% off. It usually tends to be very significant and good intuitive insight. And I've done it with people who are complete non-believers, because unfortunately I'm surrounded by plenty of those people too. And I'll use that exercise to say, you don't think you're intuitive? Okay, well, try this. And it works for them too.
I love that.
So is this something that you would recommend people do when they're going through trying times, when they have questions, or can it be done just like every week or every month?
Yes, I definitely think it can be done when you're going through trying times, but I also think it can be a wonderful check-in. I mean, you could just ask a fairly generic question like, what do I need to know right now? Or what challenges am I avoiding looking at in my life right now? I have just found that when I ask generic questions, my answers and insights tend to be a little bit more generic as well. Whereas when I really, really need specific guidance and insight to a really, should I go, should I stay question, should I take this path or that path? That's what I tend to get pretty spookily accurate information on the back of those envelopes.
Well, we love it so much. We plan on using it on an upcoming retreat that we're planning.
Fantastic.
So we can't wait. So thank you for that. In terms of how you relate to your audience, in both your books, and your podcasts, you a lot of times will share personal stories about your personal life. And as readers and as listeners, we feel like we're connecting with a friend. So the question is, was that intentional? Is that the aim? And if so, why do you think it's beneficial to be so transparent with your audience?
It's a scary time to be this vulnerable.
It is. And it's just who I am. And I think you guys must recognize this as well. I forget very, very often, actually almost always, that the microphone is in front of me and a little red button is saying recording. I just forget that. I've always been very transparent. I've always been authentic, and I feel repelled from people who don't share things with me as well. Do you know what I mean? Like I need that. I need that honesty from myself and from people. It's also a technique I used when I was teaching in the traditional classroom. If we were trying to understand a poem or a story, I would use an example from my life. And I noticed it helped students feel safer to then open up and share. And once we're able to do that, you can connect so much more deeply, not only with the person who's trying to teach and help you, but also with the material that you're trying to learn. I grew up with a family. My father went into AA when I was 14, and he was very, very involved in AA for the rest of his life. And he would drill it into my head, you're only as sick as your secrets. I guess it's an AA mantra. And so he was always very, very open and honest with me, and he encouraged me to do the same. And so that's just kind of who I am. And I just never really thought about it a lot. And sometimes it is awkward because people like my sisters will listen to the show and they'll go, did you seriously just share that story about mom? And I'm like, oh, did I say that? So it's kind of just who I am. And I don't really think about it. It wasn't planned. And there are times when I go back and think, ugh, should I just delete that whole episode?
We feel the same way. The Aunt Jeannie episode, Jen and I, like my husband sat me down. He's like, really? We're really? And I was like, whoa.
Well,
Well, thank
because
you.
we talked in the Aunt Jeannie episode, in case you were wondering. Now that Jill brought it up, we have to say what we're talking about. In that episode, we describe how we all got pinworms on vacation. And when we came home, our mother and our Aunt Jeannie went in with like tweezers and flashlights
Yeah.
to inspect. Yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway, we talked
That
about
was
that.
not the embarrassing part of that episode that I was talking about. I was talking about Samantha, we
That
were
wasn't
four. No,
embarrassing.
that
That was
wasn't
not
my
okay.
embarrassing part. My embarrassing part was like I went from not wearing a bra one day to wearing a 44C. Like literally, like I was walking home from school and my mom saw me from afar. And when I got up to her, she's like, it's time for you to wear a bra. And it was a 44C. I don't know why she waited that long, but I'm 6 feet tall. I'm a bigger person. And I was literally like in sixth grade. That's what,
Wow.
yeah.
That's a whole episode on its own, is learning to just really grow into your body.
Oh,
Seriously, I have three daughters, and watching them deal with that, it is quite a thing. So I think it's important to share that. And even though I do feel very often when I stop recording or I edit a show and I wonder, then I get all these emails from listeners who say, thank you for sharing that. I never felt comfortable voicing that even to myself. I think I've been very honest on the show about my difficult relationship with my mother, and that has been the most impactful for listeners. I think it's almost like a taboo to say anything negative about your mom, the woman who
yeah.
brought you into the world. And I'm not ever mean about her, but I'm just very honest about the struggles that she and I have shared. And it's that keeps me going with being vulnerable on the show, is listening and to the feedback and reading all the comments, because I just think nothing good stays in the shadows. That's why everything scary that happens is in the dark. And that's
Mm.
why everything good that happens is in the light, because whatever we're hiding from is what we need to face and talk about and share and shine a light on the most.
Well, from listening to your show and like I think I know you, but knowing that having that relationship with your mom created such a beautiful connection between you and your girls, like drawing on the lunch bag and the spray before they go to school. Like these are like they are amazing techniques, and how wonderful it is to have these three little fays growing up to be fairies and to utilize their energy and to be empowered women.
Oh,
Truly.
thank you. Thank you. Yeah. And again, I think going back to the book Heavenly Alliance, I try really hard to show in that book that everything that happens to us, the good, the bad, and the ugly, has a very specific reason and purpose. And I'm not saying that everything that happens in our life is destiny and fated and there's nothing we can do about it. I'm not saying that. But I do believe that we co-create our soul plan and those big things that happen in our lives. And I think you have to have that faith when you're going through it, that there's a rhyme and a reason to this. And sometimes it really is only in hindsight, because yeah, I have a fantastic relationship with my daughters. It's the greatest blessing in my life. But I'm happy to report that my sisters have amazing relationships with their children. And
Mhm.
we often talk about how we broke a generational cycle, because even though my mom was kind of mean and cantankerous, her mom made my mother look like Betty freaking Crocker. So it passes on generation to generation. And I really think sometimes we will choose those challenges specifically to heal and break that pattern. And what better thing could we do with our life than to break a generational pattern?
I'm glad you brought that up because it's a great segue into my next question. So, on Psychic Teachers and in your new book, Heavenly Alliance, you describe having a soul plan. And can you describe what that is and how it's created?
Yeah, I think that you can compare it to the Akashic Records, for example, but I really believe that before we come to Earth, we sit down with our guides and our angels and our team, and they know us probably better than we do. And I think that we look over our past lives and we look at things that we've accomplished and things that maybe we didn't face up to, or we kind of skirted or ignored. And we talk about, all right, what are some things that you really want to tackle this go around? What are some things you want to teach and learn? And I believe that we put together this very elaborate soul plan that includes choosing our parents, our siblings, if we need siblings, choosing our partners in life, our teachers, our friends throughout the whole course of our life. Now, do I think that that soul plan can be changed once we get to Earth? Yes, I do think we can kind of argue our way for some changes and amendments, but I do think, like a blueprint for building a house, I do think there's an overarching plan that we have set into place. I think we are guided to do a lot of that with the help of our invisible helpers, but I do believe that we have this trajectory that we're supposed to be on. And I feel anyway, in my life, there are moments where sometimes I'm doing something mundane, like pulling weeds in my garden, right? Or sometimes I'm doing something amazing, like watching my child graduate college. But there's these moments where I get this total sense of this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. Do you guys ever have those moments?
Yes.
It's almost
Yes.
indescribable, right? It's not like you hear a voice saying, Samantha, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Good job. It's not like that, but I'll get this feeling. And then there are other moments that are harder to deal with where I feel like, ugh, you are not on the path. You're kind of wandering off and we need to get back, into alignment. And those are also helpful as well.
Those
Do
are the
you-
moments that I remember the most. The ones where I feel like, wow, this isn't right. Those are the
That's
ones
funny.
that stick with me.
Definitely.
Do you think a soul plan is the same thing as your soul's purpose?
I think a soul purpose is a part of a soul plan.
Okay.
Hmm.
Right. So I feel like when you're creating your soul plan, you do come up with your soul purpose, which can be kind of akin to a mission statement when a company is getting ready to be born, right?
Mhm.
We have this overall idea of what our purpose is. Something I get frustrated by, though, I don't think our purpose is to be rich or successful or necessarily even amazingly happy all the time. I think our purpose is much more subtle than that. It can be, it can just be like, for example, I have a good friend. She was the one who pushed back the most on this. I was doing her soul plan reading for her, and her soul purpose, overall soul purpose, came up as motivator. And she was like, I sell houses, I'm a realtor. But I reminded her that she's always been motivating people. And shortly after that, she actually got tapped by her company to travel the whole East Coast, simply giving motivational talks to other realtors in that company because she was so great at sales. And I was like, I think I'm onto something.
Yeah.
I have another friend, and when I was looking into her soul plan, it came up that hers was caretaker. And oh my gosh, she had a really hard time with that too, because that's a difficult one.
Mhm.
And, now she's in this, she took care of her children and she took care of a menagerie of pets and she took care of her in-laws as they transitioned and she took care of her parents as they transitioned. And now she's in this situation with a brother-in-law who really needs her help, and she's caretaking him. And she called me and she said, son of a gun, I guess caretaking is one of my sole purposes. So I think if anyone listening to this is like, oh, I want to meditate on my sole purpose, I don't think it's going to be like, oh, you are here to get your PhD in this and write this bestseller. And, it's not necessarily that. It's more of an overarching theme for your life. And then I think we have a lot of choices in terms of how we use that soul purpose. Like, clearly one of my soul purposes is teaching. And I did do traditional teaching for many years and I loved it. And then I got that feeling of, oh, you need to change. You're not on the right path. You need to move on to this other path. And it terrified me. But when I started the podcast, when I started doing readings, I realized I was still teaching. And that was really comforting to me because I feel very comfortable in the role of teacher. So I think when you are living your soul purpose, you'll know it because life tends to just flow a little bit easier and you tend to feel more natural in that role. Not to say that you won't have imposter syndrome from time to time or fears or hiccups or challenges, But there is usually that sense of, oh yeah, this is where I'm supposed to be.
When I think of a soul plan, I think of two different ways and timing. Like, is it a timer, like we have like 5 minutes to get it done, or is it like you're going to be here until you finish this? How do you see it?
I think it's more fluid than that.
Hmm.
Again, going back to my relationship with my mom, I remember once meditating really, really hardcore. Like I think I took an hour out. I'm not a good meditator. I tend to meditate for about 15 to 20 minutes. This time I was like, nope, I'm going to carve out an hour and I'm going to try to get insight on this relationship. Because my mom had this habit is that if she got mad at us, she would just quote unquote disown us, which I always hated that word. And then she wouldn't speak to me for a couple of months. And I said to my guide, like, what am I supposed to learn from this? I've learned everything I can from this. I'm not getting it. And I clearly heard, that's okay. You can do it in the next go around. And I
Mm.
was like, uh-oh,
I
nope.
know. I was like, that's scary, angels.
Yeah,
No.
no, no, no. And so I really started doing some work to heal that, here and now. And I am happy to say that before she passed, we did have a beautiful moment of closure and healing, which was just incredibly impactful and a gift for me. And I think for her as well. So hopefully I won't have to come back and do that again. So even though I do feel that there are time limits in place and we can miss opportunities, we can. I don't want to scare anyone, but I do think we can miss opportunities. Not to say those opportunities won't come back around, whether it's in this lifetime or the next, but I do think if we're supposed to do something in this lifetime, I do believe they will work with us to make sure we get that done.
I love it.
That makes me feel a little better. Knowing that if I miss something, the opportunity will come back around in one way, shape, or form.
It
But
also makes me think, like, in this lifetime, just saying to myself, like, I hope I don't come back here. Like, I'm tired. That's such a Jill ego thing, as opposed to
mm,
like when I pass on and like do the debriefs and see my people on the other side. Am I going to be like, I'll go again? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I don't. I just want to make that clear. Jill does not, but I don't know what Jill's soul would say.
mm.
Yeah.
Well, I just had this conversation this morning with my youngest daughter. She said, Mom, TikTok sent me down this rabbit hole of near-death experience stories. And I
Oh,
was like, ooh, do tell. So we had this lovely chat about things she was learning about near-death experiences. And she said that there was a story about a firefighter who went to the other side and he saw one of his best friends from a prior lifetime. Now, this firefighter did not believe in past lives, but in his near-death experience, he did. And this friend from a past life said, what's it like? Are you having fun? Like, I'm in line. I can't wait to incarnate again. And she said to
Wow.
me, she said, like I love my life, but this earth place is hard. Like, why are their souls lined up? Because I always tell her being on this earth is a privilege. And so many times when I have done readings, I have seen little baby soul, like they're just waiting and hoping to come. And I said to her, tell me what you guys think about this, because I don't know. But I said, I feel like there must be other planets or lives or schools or whatever you want to call it, where it's like, a 5K. And there must be others where it's like a 10K. I think that coming to Earth is like training for the Iron Man, right? It's
mm-hmm.
like the hardest of the hardest. And if you can come here one time or 20 times or 300 times and do well, I just think that's something that people have a goal and they're looking forward to. And I believe that if you start to look at your life that way, rather than, what have I accomplished? How much have I achieved? I think it really helps us to see our life in a new light. I read this really depressing study.
Hmm.
Do you guys want to know what the most depressing age to be is in your whole life? If you live to be 100, what do you think the most depressing age is?
To me, I would say eight.
Eight, as in second
Eight.
grade?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I had a
Well, I
really
think
hard
for the
childhood.
average human being.
For the average human being, not someone who probably, had a 44 day
Yes.
in second grade.
The pinworm.
Um, I would say 50
Okay.
midlife.
Yep. I get that. It was 47.
Yeah.
And the
Wow.
study showed it's because that's when people kind of wake up and realize, oh, that dream probably isn't going to come true.
Right.
Oh, that's sad.
Isn't
That's
that
very
sad? And
sad.
I thought, oh, I don't like that. And I just think that if we look at our life more as a school or a marathon, a triathlon, rather than I've got to accomplish this, this, and this before I die, I think it'll really turn that around so that if you do get in that moment where you wake up one day and go, oh, I guess I'm never going to accomplish that, it'll change that and shift that, and then hopefully give you the oomph to maybe go ahead and try accomplishing that again or achieving it in a different way or setting a whole new dream, a whole new goal.
Or even think about what the goal is. Like what are we prioritizing in your life? Like
Mhm.
that you're not getting, because you can be kind. Like I'm the nerd. I like buying candy for people and the line behind me. Like those things like give me energy. So if like if I feel like, oh, I can't feel that way again, that happiness again, I would just create those types of little moments to create it. So I would be like, well, so you don't get the car, you didn't get the job, you're not a millionaire, but how did you live? What's your impact? What's your legacy? That would be my thought on it. But
I
I
100% agree. And I think that's because you and I swim, all of us here swim in the deep end of the ocean.
Mhm.
Like Rumi says, meet me out there. I think a lot of people stay in the shallow end of the ocean and they don't dive deep enough to understand and see the richness of life that comes from buying candy for the person in line behind you, or just doing an anonymous or random act of kindness, or just scheduling in a little cozy hour for yourself to do whatever the hell you want to do. Those things are what bring so much richness to our life. It's not the achievements. The achievements are hollow. Jim Carrey, I always quote him. He said, my greatest wish is that everyone in the world would get exactly what they want so they would realize it's the answer to nothing.
Mhm.
Because once he had all the money and all the fame in the world, he thought that was everything. And that is when he had his spiritual awakening.
that gave me goosebumps.
Mhm.
Mm.
Hang in there, guys. We'll be right back.
Hi, everyone. We are so excited to unveil the first book in our series entitled Common Mystics Present Ghost on the Road Volume 1, Murders and Mysterious Deaths.
It's everything you love about common mystics and more.
It's a retelling of 10 of our favorite stories from our pod with exciting extras.
Extras like souvenirs, what we took away from the experience, and what to know if you decide to travel in our footsteps.
Pre-order the Kindle edition now. All other formats of the book will be available for purchase at Amazon.com on July 1st, 2023.
Thanks, guys. Now back to the show.
I think midlife is a scary time for a lot of different reasons, but I think one of them is most of us, by the time we're about 50, have set up our lives. We've established what our routines are. We're already on a path. And then if we're not happy, making a change at that time is super scary. And I just had this conversation with my husband this morning because he's in a rut. And I was on a jog this morning and it occurred to me, Dennis needs a sense of adventure. He needs to step out of his comfort zone and do something that he can use some outlet for his creativity and a sense of community. Because aside from me, he doesn't, and people from work, he doesn't really get out. He doesn't have a creative community right now. And he's becoming, sorry, honey, like a little bit more bitter about that, So I was bringing up, like you could join a theater group, just in town. You could try out for a play. You could take a class. You could go on a solo trip while I'm teaching and do like a walking tour of Scotland or something. Like, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to explore what else is out there because there's, we're 50 and there's not unlimited time left. There never is. But when you're young, you feel like you have all the time in the world, right? Like you have infinity, but there are so many opportunities. And I think fear, and you talk about this too in the book, fear is your worst enemy. Fear is what keeps us from living our best lives. So anyway.
It really is. I mean, fear I think is also very instructive because it really can teach us a lot about why we are stuck. And I think it's so hard to get someone else out of those stuck spots. We've all been in them.
Thank
I
you.
know when,
Thank you for
but it really
understanding
is.
what I'm
It's
going
so
through.
hard. And when you tell people like you should do this, you should do that. If you're on the receiving end of that, it feels like an attack. And if you're in your position trying to get your husband, then it's bad all around. I always recommend just praying, just talking to whoever it is that you pray to and just say, I'm open. Show me what my next step is. I mean, gosh, look at me. I was looking really hard down the barrel of 50. I'd been divorced for 7 years, and my friends were constantly telling me, you're in a rut. All you do is work and write and play with your kids. And, you need to do something different and get out there. And I just wasn't ready. I was terrified. I was afraid. And I decided to sit with that fear. And I didn't know what to do about it. I knew the dating apps weren't for me. I didn't want to meet a random stranger. I had a lot of fear. So I just sat with that fear for a long time, a really long time. And I just started praying about it. And it just said, what should I do? What should I do? And I remembered the only idea that kept coming to my head was to join a new gym. And I was like, a new gym? This is not, I'm not like Olivia Newton-John in that, what was that Get Physical movie from the 80s? Like,
But
I'm
you
not
could
gonna
be.
meet
To be
anyone
fair,
at a
you
gym.
could
How
be.
cheesy is that? But I've learned enough to follow my intuition. So I did join a new gym, and that's where I met my person, and I just got engaged. We've been together a year and a half. We just got engaged.
Oh,
And if I hadn't-
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so excited. But if I hadn't have followed that, that advice seemed nothing in alignment with what was actually on my heart. And yet I just followed that. So that's happened to me so many times in my life where I'll pray for something and I'll feel as though the guidance I'm getting is completely mismatched from what I'm asking for. And yet it never is because, our invisible team of helpers, they know a lot more than we do. And so I always say with fear, those quotes that say like, feel the fear and do it anyway. I don't know if that's necessarily true. And hear me out. I think that fear is an instructive thing, and you need to sit with it for a while and play with it and give it the time and attention that it needs and look at it honestly. So for example, when I was actively doing readings and, getting out there and had a waiting list, I had a lot of offers come to me for really being out there, right? I had a television offer, I had some going on stage stuff, and it terrified me. And I had to really sit with that. And I realized it wasn't so much the fear that was making me say no to that. It just wasn't in alignment with my personality. And so I realized it wasn't so much fear. It was, this isn't who you are, Samantha. And just because people are telling you this is what you should do and where you should go, doesn't mean you have to. Does that make sense? So I think
That
sometimes
really does.
Sometimes fear, it's not like, oh, you got to beat it down and tackle it and overcome it and hit that hurdle. I think sometimes fear is telling you like, heads up, this isn't the path for you. And that's why, meditation is so important, having that quiet time, doing the envelope exercise, something where you can really look within and think, what is this uncomfortable sensation I'm calling fear? What is it trying to tell me? And sometimes the answer is, yeah, just do it. Just do it anyway. Feel the fear and do it anyway. But I think other times it's saying, yeah, this isn't your path.
Right.
I love that.
And I think you hit the nail on the head, that meditation and sitting with it, asking yourself, what exactly am I afraid of? Right? Am I afraid? Is it stage fright? Or is it, I'm afraid I'll end up in a place that won't ultimately make me happy and put me in a position to learn the lessons I'm here to learn? Those are two different reasons to be afraid. So thank you for that. That's a really great reminder to our listeners.
I feel like she was talking directly to you. I was like, uh-oh. I was like, we're going to have to talk later.
Oh, God. Oh, you mentioned something a little while ago about altering the soul plan, that the soul plan can be altered. And actually, chapter 7 of your book is all about altering the soul plan or amending it once you're here on Earth, right? So you're
Right.
here on Earth and, things happen because everybody has free will. And at that point, the soul plan can be altered. But my question is, what's the difference between altering it and just failing to follow it? Like, is there a difference?
I think there definitely is a difference. I think when we fail to follow our soul plan, our life feels uncentered, ungrounded. We feel anxious, unsure, unsteady.
Mm.
There's that sense, and it's almost wordless, where you just know you're not really doing the things you're supposed to be doing. I mean, haven't any of you experienced those times where you just know you're kind of hiding from the world?
Mm-hmm. Doggy
Right?
paddling.
Yeah.
You're just doggy
Yeah.
paddling.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's when you're just not living into the fullness of your soul plan. When you alter your soul plan, that's when you look at your life and you think, no, I'm not doing this anymore. And I'm going to make some drastic changes and steps for myself to change this. That's what you do. Now here's something a friend who also read the book asked me, is that also part of your soul plan?
I was thinking the same thing. Like
Right.
that was the purpose for you to be like, you know what? I was the caretaker. Now I'm taking care of me.
Exactly. Yeah. And I have to say, I don't know. It's the answer to that question. Very possibly it could be. The messages I always get from my guides and angels is that it's all okay. That there, I'm not saying that there is no judgment and you can do whatever, anything you want. I'm not saying that. But I do feel like if you have set a soul plan for yourself and you get here and it's a little bit more challenging than you thought it would be, and you want to alter that and make it a little bit easier, that's okay. But if you choose to just, plow your way through those challenges and work, and kind of just put your nose to the grindstone and get through it, that's okay too. I don't think there's judgment either way from our team of helpers in regards to that.
So it appears that the difference would be that conscious intention about the way you're living your life versus just flailing around without any sort of sense of purpose.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I think we have to always be conscious of who we are and where we are and what we're really thinking and feeling, because so often we're just going along to get along, or we do get stuck in those ruts, or it's hard, especially as you get older. Every decision and choice you make is not just about you. It's going to affect your friends and your significant others and your family members and all of that. And so that can get really complicated. But if you're in tune and really keeping that dialogue open with, again, I don't care about labels and names, higher self, inner self, guide, angel, whatever you want to term it. If you keep that dialogue open, I don't think anyone's going to stray far from the path for long.
So, Jill and I on our podcast, we model how we are always talking to spirit. Our spirit leads us to our stories. Spirit leads us to where we are on the road. And we're also very vocal about how we communicate with our mom, our grandma, our aunts, and, that we do have and foster a relationship with our family members on the other side and our ancestors as well. So I guess my question to you is, I have a sense that Jill and I are not the norm just because of the way we grew up and, we're podcasters, but how would you describe the relationship that most people have with their spirit guides, ancestors, and angels?
I think most people have a relationship with their guides and angels and they are unaware of it.
Oh.
So they might call it inspiration or an aha moment or coincidence or synchronicity or a feeling, but I don't think they're aware that that is really coming from their guide and angel. And I think that's okay. It's not like they're out there looking for thanks and approval and accolades.
Do you
right?
think there's a danger in relying on angels, guides, and ancestors too much? Jennifer makes fun of me because I use them to cheat at games. I mean,
And to find a parking space, like literally, Samantha.
Samantha, to find a parking space, that is legit a reason to be like, need your help.
I see, and I would never do that. Like, I am very, yeah, I don't reach out as much as Jill reaches out.
I reach
But
out for
anyway,
everything.
so can you settle this argument?
Well, I don't want to settle that argument for you too. I think I believe anything on either side of an extreme is not a great thing, right?
Oh,
I think if you never look into the world of spirituality, that's not good. I think if you rely on it too heavily, that's not good. I think there needs to be a balance there. And I think if you're making major life decisions based on what a guide or an angel tells you, without carefully testing it against yourself and your own intuition and feelings, I don't think that's a great idea. Because again, think about it. If this is a school, our teacher is never telling us the answers all the time, right? Because then what would we learn? I think it's a beautiful thing to rely on them for help and extra guidance and insight and signs and all of that. But I don't think we should make major life decisions based on that. I've had a lot of listeners email me through the years saying, I asked to see a yellow butterfly if I was supposed to leave my job. And I saw 10 yellow butterflies on a documentary I watched that night. So I left my job and I've been unemployed for a year. What the hell happened?
Oh, no.
Right. So I've seen like things like that happen. And I think it's important to recognize that sometimes a sign isn't really a sign. Sometimes we're looking for a sign. There's that thing, it starts with a P. Is it pareidolia? Our brain will do that if we are, how they say, like, if you buy a pink car, suddenly you see pink cars everywhere.
right.
Yes.
So I think it's important to rely on them for help and insight, but then again, to test it and really think about how you feel. It's our feelings inside. That's our true barometer. And that's what's never going to lead us astray. I mean, how many times has like, it seems as though all the signs led you to this person or this job or this place to move. And yet inside you're questioning it. You're going over it. You're calling friends to talk about it. That's the best sign that maybe you're not really being led on this direction and this path. So it's tricky. It's not easy. Like I said, we're the Oxford or Harvard of schools, so it's not going to be easy.
I love that. And I think in my awareness, I will tell you that I rely on my guides, my angels, my grandma especially, way too much. However, she's like, I would describe her as magic. If you ask grandma for something, she's going to bring it to you. But there was this one day I was leaving Jennifer's house, and I live in Michigan and Jen lives in the Chicagoland area. And I was driving way too fast and I knew it. And I was tired and I didn't care. And then I saw a cop. And I'm like, Grandma, please. And I just knew. She was like, no, you need to learn. You can't. This isn't like you can just drive around like a butthole all the time. Like, are there reasons for you to be in a hurry? Yes. But because you want to get home? No. No. So I got a ticket. It wasn't a bad one. The cop was nice. But the point was, I did get the consequence. And I also got the shaming from her on the other side. Like, don't be abusing me. But that just knowing that give and take is there, knowing that I wasn't alone, that it could have been so much worse, that this was like an easy way to learn a lesson, like don't be a jerk in the car. That made me feel whole, like, okay, I get it. Fine, I'll slow down. But
no, I think that's really important. And I also think it's important to be honest about who you're asking for help, right? One of the things my mom said to me a couple of days before she died, she said, once I get to the other side, I will be able to help you so much more. And I thought about her strong, feisty personality. And I thought, damn right. Like, if I ask my mom for something, she's going to be like the persistent widow, tugging on Jesus's dress. Like, no, it's going to happen. Whereas my dad was like very quiet, conservative, shy, introspective. If I asked him for something, he'd be like, well, let me see. I don't know if I want to bother them. So I think also people need to keep in mind the personality of the loved one on the other side that you're requesting help from, because it depends.
Very good point.
Okay. So in your book, Heavenly Alliance, you describe the difference between the ego mind and your intuitive mind. And this is a quote from your book. The ego second guesses everything and overanalyzes all your actions and thoughts. By contrast, when your intuition sends messages, it's your soul, your true essence speaking. Intuitive messages, therefore, are loving, kind, calm, and consistent. So, can you share an aha moment when you realized that awareness of your ego self versus your intuition coming through?
Yeah, I've had so many. It's hard to think of just one. I feel like anytime our ego mind is talking to us, the message changes too, right?
Hmm.
And so you might be asking for insight. I remember when I was teaching English at the community college, and I kept getting that feeling that I was supposed to change course, that I was supposed to leave that teaching field. And that was my intuition. And it was very calm and it was very consistent and it never changed. But when I would be walking to classes, or if I had a tough day in a classroom, my ego mind would be like, yeah, you just got to get out now. You just got to leave right now. Or if I had a great day in the classroom, my ego mind would say, these students need you. You can't leave us. Look at how much, you're helping, or you have a good rapport with this group. You cannot leave. And so the messages were constantly changing. And it was only when I just tuned all of that out and focused on that very generic feeling I had of, you need to leave this field. That's when I just was like, okay, wait, time out. And I pushed my ego mind to the side and I really tried to focus on my intuition. Now, I don't know why, maybe because water is a conductor of energy, but I tend to get my best information, meditatively speaking, if I'm sitting in a bath, if I'm showering, if I'm swimming in a pool, or, in the ocean, or just walking by a stream. Something about it helps me. And I remember I was just soaking at a bathtub, and I was thinking about this, and this thought popped into my head of going to this intuitive development class. And it just kept coming and it didn't change. It didn't alter. It wasn't insistent. It wasn't scary. And I thought, okay. And so I just followed that. And of course, that changed everything for me. And I ended up leaving my job at the end of that year. So that's the first example that really pops into my mind. Another example I also tell in the book, when I was graduating college, I had a job in the city. I went to University of Connecticut. So of course, all my friends moved to either Boston or New York. All my friends were going to New York. My college boyfriend was in New York. So I wanted to be in New York, and I got a good job there. But I kept getting this intuitive nudging to apply to grad school. And I was like, no, I don't want to stay in school anymore. And I would just push it away. And my ego mind told me all these things. You can't afford graduate school. You'd have to move back home. That wouldn't be fun. You'd be away from your friends. It was just so frantic. And my intuition was just very, this is where you belong. And I was like, no, no, no.
I love it.
My college advisor said, hey, there's this grad program. You have to interview for it. But if they select you, they'll pay for your degree. You just have to substitute teach at any public school in Connecticut during the day. And I was like, okay, all right, I'll just go for the interview. And I went for the interview, and it was at an alternative high school for kids that had just gotten out of rehab. And the director of the program said, have you heard of this rehabilitation center called Arms Acres? That's the rehab center my dad went to when he joined AA. And I just got chills, which is always a good sign for me. And I just knew. I knew. So I knew without knowing. I couldn't say yes quick enough. I knew that was my path. And so I did it. So there's those moments where you just know without even knowing.
And I love how, because so many times Jen and I will be on the road or using our intuition, and it will be like, Spirit, please don't make us have to tell the story. We don't want to tell the story. We don't want this story. And of course, we have to do it because we have a contract with Spirit. You lead us, we tell the story. So yeah, we can relate to that feeling of, no, not now, not this one.
Well, and also what I love about Samantha's example about following your intuition, when you do release control of the ego and follow your intuition, the universe will put the tools you need right in front of you, and it seems to fall into place. It's when you're not following your intuition that you feel like you have to fight for every step you're taking. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's so true. And just like with fear though, I think the ego gets a bad rap because we need a little bit of an ego. If I didn't have a little bit of an ego, I wouldn't have a podcast.
Mm.
I wouldn't have written these books, you know? So the ego is here to serve us in many regards. And what it's really trying to do is protect us.
Mhm.
You know, the ego wanted me to stay at that safe job at the community college. I loved that job. I loved my friends and my students, and it wanted to protect me and keep me there. And I understand that. And the ego wanted me to go to New York City because it wanted me to be with my boyfriend and be with my friends and, you know, have that life that I'd always dreamed of in the city. So I don't think we should banish the ego, deny the ego. I think we need to just be aware of all the thoughts that we are thinking and feeling.
And then it's a spectrum, right? Sometimes, we say the same thing about empathy. Sometimes empathy is really, really good and necessary, but I don't want my surgeon to have that much empathy. I don't want my vet to have that much empathy when he's taking care of my sick animal. I want him to shut that off and do what he has to do.
Yeah, exactly. But you have to always go within and really pay attention to what you're truly thinking, feeling, and believing about a situation that you're in if you want to change it. And again, it doesn't have to be meditation. It can be yoga, it can be a walk, it can be knitting, anything you can do that just kind of stills that monkey mind so that you can be aware. I love the quote from the Gospel of Thomas where Jesus says, if you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. And I think that is so true. We have to be aware of what our soul is really trying to tell us. And I have the weirdest example to demonstrate that maybe you guys can recognize in your own lives. But when I was in my 40s, I had to have a hysterectomy. So I was slammed overnight into menopause. And it was really, really hard for me, the hot flashes and all of that. And I realized, my friend Deb, who had already been through it, she kept saying, treat it like a wave, like just ride the wave. So when the hot flash comes, just tell it, okay, and feel it and let it move on. And I was like, all right, I'll try that. So as I just observed it, I realized that my hot flashes were triggered by stressful thoughts. So if I was running late or if I was thinking, oh my gosh, I never emailed that person back, boom, I'd get a hot flash. And there were several times where I would be sitting on the couch watching a lovely movie with my kids and I would get a hot flash. And I would think, wait, I have no stressful thoughts right now. Why is this happening? And then I would think, oh, that scene in that movie reminded me of this experience and it would trigger something. And so I started really using that as a way of becoming cognizant of, I think we almost have thoughts that are going on in our head all the time, but I think we also have thoughts that are going on in our soul. Does that make sense? And we have physical responses to them. And sometimes you get a headache and you're like, where'd that come from? Or maybe a muscle spasms in your shoulder and you're like, where is that from? I wasn't even working out today. But I think it's always our body trying to work in tandem with our mind and our soul to teach us of what's really going on deep within. And so, yeah, that's why I think stillness is important. And it's also why we need to listen to the fear, listen to the ego, but follow the intuition.
Thank you so much. That resonated in so many different ways. It's after 4. We have 10 rapid fire questions if you have time for it. So don't want to. Are you sure?
Yeah.
So this is just us being silly and fun, but Jennifer, you have the first question.
Okay. What tarot card do you connect with and why?
The Fool.
Oh,
I love
that's Jill's too.
Is it yours?
Yes.
Oh, I love the Fool card because he's standing on the precipice. He's got everything he needs in his knapsack. He's got a little dog by his side. And yet you don't know, is he jumping off that cliff to his demise? Or is he going to take a leap of faith so big he's going to make it to the next chapter of his life?
It gives me goosebumps.
I love all the potential and magic in that card.
Yeah, that's awesome. Ouija boards, yes, no, where do you fall?
For me personally, it's a no, but only because of my Catholic upbringing. And so I worry that I bring my preconceived notions to that board and that will affect what I get out of it. I've seen other people have beautiful experiences. So it's a yes for other people, it's a no for me.
Okay, good psychics, bad psychics. What makes a psychic good, and what are the signs of a good versus bad psychic?
Ethics make a good
Ooh,
psychic. I
nice.
believe that a psychic has to be 100% ethical. There have been times in my life where I've been emotionally distraught or stressed and I can't make a good connection. And I've had to just say no to readings during those times. Sometimes there's people I just don't connect with on an energetic level, and I have to be honest and say no. And we've all read about really bad psychics, so I don't even need to bring up the obvious ethics of that. So I think ethics make a good psychic, and also being aware that it's a muscle. It's not a gift. It's nothing special. It's not like the psychic fairy sprinkled extra dust on us. It's a muscle, and we just simply signed up to learn it and train it. And like anything, we have to constantly work at it. And I think a good psychic needs to constantly stay in school, learning and studying and growing.
I love it. Is there any theory that is too woo woo for you? Any metaphysical theory or principle that you heard that you're like, yeah,
No, I don't think so. I'm not super big into channeling, like just me personally. I don't like the idea of anyone taking over my body.
mm,
I don't like that. Talking to like Palladians, it's a little too far for me, but I love reading about it. I love talking to people about it.
Hmm.
So I don't think there's anything. I'm so curious about people and their experiences that no, there's nothing that would be too far out there. But again, like the Ouija board, for me personally, I like to be very grounded and in the here and now. So I don't want any ghosts touching me. I don't want any spirits talking through me.
Same. So, how do you recognize the opportunity for spiritual growth when it presents itself? And do you always embrace those opportunities? Or are there some times that you say, not today, spirit?
Oh, there are many times when I say not today, spirit, many times. I think it's important to have boundaries with this world, to have boundaries with yourself, because we live in a three-dimensional world that is very earth-based. And I think it's more important to be grounded and live here and do the laundry and get your bills done necessarily than to constantly be I think there needs to be a balance there. What was the first part of your question?
How do you recognize those opportunities for spiritual growth when they come up?
Well, I think spiritual growth often appears in the guise of challenge and struggle. And I think when we can take a moment and sit with that challenge, and again, rather than look at it as a victim-y, woe is me type of thing, and instead say, okay, what is this trying to teach me? Then we can move forward.
love it. Any psychic, living or past, would you want to sit down and have a tea with to pick their brain?
Oh, so many of them. Oh my gosh. I would love to sit down with John Edward. I think he's absolutely
Oh.
fantastic.
Mhm.
I love Tony Stockwell. There's so many living psychics and mediums that I think are absolutely fantastic and amazing. Probably Arthur Ford really has always stood out to me. He was such an honest medium, and he seems to be such a gentle soul. And maybe because of what I shared before about my dad, Arthur Ford was in AA, and he really shares a lot in some of his writings about it is so beautiful to be a psychic medium. It really is, but it can be a burden, the carrying the grief that people have, holding that space with them, recognizing, when we do this work, we're able to see into a person in ways that I feel maybe only a therapist or a priest or a minister normally does. It's very sacred work that we do. And Arthur Ford always talked so openly and honestly about that. So I would love to be able to sit and talk to him.
I don't know anything about him, so I'm literally going to look it up.
Oh, he's
Truly.
great. His main book is Nothing So Strange.
Love.
And our last question for you is, If you had the opportunity to give a message to a new soul incarnating for the first time, what would it be?
I think it would have to be have fun and always be honest with yourself.
I love that.
Samantha Fey, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This has been such a delight. We love you and we appreciate you and everything that you have done in your life that has directly and indirectly impacted ours. Please know that we will be eternally grateful.
Thank you guys so much. I can't tell you how much I appreciate hearing those words. You guys are the best.
It's really true. Thank you so much for your work and to remind us all to be the light we want to see. Truly. I have to remind myself, I'm like, be the light. So thank you.
Thank you.
You
Thank
have a good evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is there anything you want to tell our listeners about where they can find you or find your books or anything?
Sure. I'm at samanthafey.com. My Instagram is Samantha O. Fey. On Facebook, I'm Psychic Teachers and Enlightened Empaths. I am getting ready to record all of the meditations that are available in the book and